The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber slid open with a deep rumble that echoed through the enormous hall. Ambassador Zektar stepped forward, his tall blue form casting long shadows across the polished floor. His 6 arms moved in perfect rhythm as he walked, each step deliberate and threatening. Behind him, representatives from 12 different alien species watched with cold eyes as the human delegation sat in their assigned section. Captain Jake Morrison felt sweat forming on his palms as he gripped the armrests of his chair. He had been in combat zones before, faced down enemy ships in the darkness of space, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. The weight of billions of human lives pressed down on his shoulders as he sat among the small group of Earth's representatives. The chamber itself was a monument to alien power. Towering columns stretched up into darkness, covered with symbols from 1,000 different worlds. The air hummed with energy fields that translated every word spoken into hundreds of languages simultaneously. Floating platforms held delegates from species that humanity had only dreamed about in their wildest science fiction stories. Admiral Lisa Warren sat perfectly still beside Morrison, her face showing no emotion despite the tension in the room. She had served Earth's Navy for 30 years, rising through the ranks during humanity's first contact with alien civilizations. Now she led Earth's diplomatic mission to the Council, a job that had become increasingly difficult over the past 2 years. Zekthar reached the center of the chamber and turned to face the human section. His large black eyes focused on Warren with an intensity that made several of the younger diplomats shift uncomfortably in their seats. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of someone who had never been refused. "The Galactic Council has reached a decision regarding the human question," he announced, his words flowing through the translation system with mechanical precision. "For too long, the species known as humans have operated without proper oversight. Their expansion into unclaimed systems has proceeded without Council approval. Your military buildup threatens the peace that has existed in this galaxy for 3,000 years." Morrison felt his jaw clench as he listened to the accusations. Everything Zekthar said was technically true, but it ignored the context that had forced humanity to act. For months, human trade ships had been attacked by pirates, who seemed to know exactly when and where to strike. Colony supply runs had been delayed or blocked entirely by bureaucratic complications that only affected human vessels. Requests for Council protection had been met with demands for information about human military capabilities and defensive positions. "The Council has been patient," Zekthar continued, beginning to pace in front of the human delegation. "We have overlooked minor violations of galactic law. We have ignored the aggressive nature that your species has demonstrated throughout your brief history in space. But patience has its limits." Dr. Sam Parker sat in the back row of the human section, his fingers dancing across a small datapad, hidden beneath his diplomatic folder. As Earth's chief xenobiologist, he was officially part of the cultural exchange program. Unofficially, he had spent the last 8 months analyzing every piece of alien technology and communication that crossed his path. What he had discovered would have shocked the Council if they knew, but Parker kept his expression neutral as he continued his covert data collection. "Therefore," Zekthar announced, stopping directly in front of Warren, "the Council hereby demands the following from the human government. Within 30 standard days, Earth will transfer 50% of its military fleet to Council control. All human colonies beyond your home system will accept Council administrators to oversee their operations. No human expansion into new systems will cease immediately and permanently." The silence that followed was deafening. Even the constant hum of the translation system seemed to fade as the weight of the ultimatum settled over the chamber. Morrison could feel his heart pounding as he processed what he had just heard. The Council was not just demanding submission. They were demanding the end of human independence. Furthermore, Zekthar added, his voice taking on an even more threatening tone, "Failure to comply with these demands will result in immediate economic isolation. All trade agreements with Council member species will be terminated. Human vessels will be barred from entering Council space. Military intervention will be authorized if necessary to protect galactic stability." Admiral Warren stood slowly, her movements controlled and deliberate. Every eye in the chamber focused on her as she straightened her uniform and looked directly at Zekthar. The Vortani ambassador was nearly twice her height, but Warren showed no signs of intimidation as she met his gaze. "The United Earth Government will provide our response within the specified time frame," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber despite its calm tone. "We request permission to return to Earth for consultation with our leadership." XR expression showed satisfaction, clearly interpreting Warren's diplomatic language as the beginning of surrender negotiations. Around the chamber, other alien delegates nodded approvingly, pleased that the troublesome humans would finally be brought under proper control. What none of them knew was that, hidden in the diplomatic pouches carried by the human delegation, were detailed reports that would change everything. Dr. Parker had discovered something that the Council desperately needed, but could never ask for directly. His analysis of intercepted communications had revealed weaknesses in Council technology that humanity could exploit. Most importantly, his team had found something in human space that would shift the balance of power in ways the aliens could never imagine. As the human delegation prepared to leave the chamber, Morrison caught Warren's eye. The Admiral's slight nod told him everything he needed to know. Earth would provide a response to the Council's ultimatum, but it would not be the submission that Zekthar expected. The real question was whether the galaxy was ready for humanity's answer. The mining drill bit through solid rock like it was cutting through butter, sending vibrations up through Tony Walsh's boots as he stood on the observation platform. He had been running mining operations for 15 years, but he had never seen anything like what his equipment was pulling up from the depths of Kepler 4b. The planet was supposed to be a routine mineral extraction site. Nothing more than iron and copper deposits that would help supply the growing human colonies. Tony wiped sweat from his forehead and leaned over the railing to get a better look at the conveyor belt carrying chunks of ore up from the mining shaft. Mixed in with the expected gray and brown rocks were crystals that seemed to glow with their own internal light. They pulsed with colors that shifted from deep blue to brilliant white, creating patterns that hurt to look at directly. "Hey, Martinez," Tony called to his shift supervisor. "Come take a look at this stuff. I've never seen anything like it." Carlos. Martinez jogged over from the control station, his hard hat bouncing with each step. He had worked mines on 6 different worlds and prided himself on knowing every type of mineral deposit in human space. When he saw the crystals on the conveyor belt, his confident expression changed to confusion. "What the hell is that?" Carlos asked, reaching out to touch one of the smaller crystals. The moment his gloved finger made contact, the crystal flared with bright light and emitted a high-pitched humming sound that made both men step back quickly. "I was hoping you could tell me," Tony replied, his voice tight with concern. "The deep scanners didn't pick up anything unusual, but we've been pulling this stuff up for the last 3 hours. The amount is increasing with every load." Within 6 hours, word of the discovery had reached Earth's colonial administration. Within 12 hours, Dr. Amy Chen was aboard the fastest ship in the Earth Defense Force fleet, racing toward the Kepler 442 system with a team of the best scientists humanity could assemble. The journey that normally took 2 weeks was completed. In 10 days, pushing the ship's engines to their absolute limits, Dr. Chen stood in the cargo bay of the research vessel Defiance, staring at the collection of crystals that had been carefully transported from the mining site. Each crystal was secured in its own containment field. But even through the energy barriers, she could feel something unusual about them. The air around the crystals seemed to vibrate with potential energy, like standing next to a massive generator. Initial scans show quantum properties that shouldn't exist in normal matter, reported Dr. Kevin Brooks, Chen's lead physicist. The crystalline structure appears to be stable, but the quantum field interactions are unlike anything in our databases. We're dealing with something completely new to science. Chen nodded as she walked between the containment units, taking readings with her handheld scanner. The numbers on the display made no sense according to everything she knew about physics. The crystals seemed to exist in multiple quantum states simultaneously, something that should have been impossible for anything larger than subatomic particles. "Run a simulation on faster-than-light field interactions," she ordered her team. I want to know what happens if we try to use these crystals as a power source for jump drives. The simulation took 18 hours to complete, running on the most powerful computers available to the research team. When the results came back, Chen had to run the test 3 more times to believe what she was seeing. The crystals could reduce faster than light travel time by 90%, while using only a fraction of the energy required by current technology. More importantly, preliminary surveys of other star systems suggested that these crystals only formed under very specific gravitational conditions. The combination of stellar mass, planetary arrangement, magnetic field strength needed to create them had only been found in systems currently controlled by human colonies. Meanwhile, on Earth, Colonel Steve Martinez was receiving reports that would change the course of human history. Hidden deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, in a facility that officially did not exist, he coordinated the most classified project in human space. For 3 years, automated construction ships had been converting asteroids throughout human territory into defensive platforms. Each platform was powered by fusion reactors and armed with weapons that the Galactic Council had never seen. Human engineers had developed particle beam arrays that could punch through any known shielding system. Missile launchers carried warheads designed to disrupt the quantum fields that most alien ships used for faster-than-light travel. Status. Report on Project Fortress, Martinez ordered as he walked into the main control room. Lieutenant Commander Janet Davis looked up from her console, her face showing the exhaustion of someone who had been working around the clock for weeks. 237 platforms are fully operational. Another 86 will be online within 72 hours. All systems are running silent until activation orders are received. Martinez nodded with satisfaction. The platforms were positioned throughout human space in seemingly random locations, disguised as mining operations or research stations. To any outside observer, they would appear to be normal civilian installations. Only when activated would they reveal their true purpose as the foundation of humanity's defensive network. On Earth, President Helen Rodriguez convened an emergency meeting of the War Council in the secure conference room beneath the Capitol building. The room was filled with humanity's best military minds, including General Rick Thompson and Intelligence Director Kate Harrison. The atmosphere was tense as classified reports were distributed around the table. The situation has changed dramatically, Rodriguez announced as she took her seat at the head of the table. The discovery in the Kepler system gives us options we didn't have before. The question is whether we're prepared to use them. General Thompson opened his folder and scanned the contents quickly. His weathered face showed no emotion as he read about the crystal properties and their potential applications. How long before the Council learns about this discovery, sir? Security measures are holding, Harrison replied. All personnel involved have been briefed on the classification level. The mining site has been designated as a routine industrial operation. However, we can't keep this secret indefinitely. Rodriguez looked around the table at the faces of men and women who had dedicated their lives to protecting humanity. The decision they made in this room would determine whether their species remained free or became subjects of alien rule. Council's ultimatum expires in 18 days, she said quietly. They expect us to surrender our independence and submit to their authority. Instead, we're going to show them that humanity doesn't negotiate from a position of weakness. The vote was unanimous. Earth would give the Council an answer they would never forget. The countdown clock in Earth's Strategic Command Center showed 22 days until the Council's deadline. The massive underground facility buzzed with activity as hundreds of personnel worked around the clock to prepare for what many believed would be humanity's greatest challenge. Commander Alex Rivera stood before the main tactical display, watching as status updates flowed in from across human space. Each green dot on the display represented a human world or outpost, connected by thin lines that showed trade routes and communication channels. To any outside observer, it would look like a normal administrative map. What the display didn't show were the hidden assets that had been quietly positioned throughout the network over the past 3 years. Final status report on Operation Nightfall, Rivera ordered, his voice carrying clearly across the command, her fingers dancing across the controls. As she brought up classified data streams, all sleeper assets are in position and ready for activation. We have personnel embedded in 47 Council commercial networks. 18 military supply chains, and 32 civilian infrastructure systems. Rivera nodded as he studied the information. People Foster was referring to were not soldiers, or spies in the traditional sense. They were engineers, technicians, maintenance workers, and traders who had spent years building trust with alien employers. To the Council species, they were simply reliable human workers who kept their machines running and their systems operational. What the aliens didn't know was that each of these individuals had been carefully selected and trained for this moment. They carried no weapons and had no access to sensitive military information. Dead, they possessed something far more valuable: intimate knowledge of how Council technology worked and where its weaknesses lay. Dr. Nina Foster worked in her laboratory aboard the research station Hidden Valley, a facility that officially didn't exist on any star charts. The station orbited a dead planet in an unnamed system, powered by reactors that ran completely silent to avoid detection. For 6 months, she had been developing weapons based on the quantum properties discovered in the Kepler crystals. Firing sequence 17 is complete, she announced to her team as she reviewed the data from their latest experiment. The quantum torpedo successfully penetrated 3 layers of standard Council shielding without triggering any defensive responses. Her assistant, Dr. Gary Brooks, looked up from his workstation with excitement. The phasing technology works better than we hoped. The torpedo exists in quantum superposition until it reaches the target coordinates, then materializes inside the enemy vessel. Foster smiled as she watched the test footage replay on her screen. The torpedo had passed through solid metal as if it didn't exist, then exploded harmlessly inside an empty test chamber. When used against an enemy ship, the same weapon would detonate inside the vessel's hull, bypassing all external defenses. Begin production of the full combat load, she ordered. We'll need 2,000 units ready for deployment within 15 days. On Earth, communications specialist Ben Taylor coordinated the most complex information network in human history from his station deep beneath the Colorado mountains. His job was to ensure that every human settlement, from the largest colonies to the smallest research outposts, could communicate instantly when the time came. The quantum communication array he operated used technology reverse-engineered from Council systems, then improved by human engineers. Like the alien networks that could be intercepted or jammed, the human system used quantum entanglement to create truly secure channels. Messages sent through the network existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, making them impossible to detect or block. Network status check complete, Taylor reported to his supervisor. All 347 nodes are operational and synchronized. We can reach every human settlement in the galaxy within 30 seconds of sending a priority alert. Network represented years of careful planning and construction. Communication relays had been disguised as mining equipment, research stations, and commercial facilities. Even if the Council discovered and destroyed half of the nodes, the remaining systems would automatically reroute to maintain full coverage. Captain Julie Peterson commanded the stealth reconnaissance ship Shadow Dancer as it drifted silently through the outer edges of Council space. Her mission was to monitor alien fleet movements and identify potential threats to human worlds. What she had discovered over the past weeks was both encouraging and concerning. The Council is positioning their main battle groups for what they clearly expect to be a simple enforcement action, she reported during her daily communication with Earth Command. Intelligence estimates suggest they're planning to make an example of 1 or 2 human colonies to force compliance with their demands. Peterson's ship was equipped with the most advanced stealth technology humanity had developed. Using quantum field manipulation, the Shadow Dancer could become effectively invisible to all known detection systems. The technology was based on the same crystalline discoveries that powered their new weapons, making the ship undetectable even to Council sensors. I've identified their primary staging areas, Peterson continued. 3 major fleet concentrations in the Rigel, Vega, and Arcturus sectors. Total estimated strength is 800 vessels, including 47 heavy cruisers and 12 dreadnought-class ships. The numbers were impressive, but Peterson knew that quantity didn't always determine the outcome of a battle. Human ships were smaller and fewer in number. but they carried weapons and defensive systems that the Council had never encountered. Back on Earth, Admiral Warren met with the planet's leadership in the secure briefing room that had become the center of human strategic planning. The walls were covered with displays showing the positions of fleets, the status of defensive preparations, and countdown timers marking the remaining time until the Council's deadline. "All preparations are complete," Warren announced to the assembled group. "Our people are in position, our weapons are ready, and our communication networks are operational. The question now is whether we're prepared to change the balance of power in this galaxy forever." President Rodriguez looked around the room at the faces of humanity's leaders. These men and women had guided their species through first contact with alien civilizations, the establishment of interstellar colonies, and the gradual realization that they were not welcome as equals in galactic society. "The Council believes they hold all the advantages," Rodriguez said quietly. "They have more ships, more advanced technology, and the support of dozens of allied species. What they don't understand is that humanity has never learned how to surrender." Final phase of preparation began immediately. Across human space, ordinary people went about their daily lives while extraordinary events unfolded around them. The galaxy would soon learn that underestimating humanity was a mistake that civilizations made only once. The 30th day arrived with the same cold precision that had marked every moment since the Council delivered their ultimatum. Admiral Lisa Warren walked through the corridors of the Galactic Council station, her footsteps echoing off the polished walls as she made her way to the chamber where humanity's fate would supposedly be decided. Behind her, the small human delegation followed in silence, each carrying the weight of what was about to unfold. The chamber doors opened to reveal the same scene that had witnessed humanity's humiliation 30 days earlier. Alien representatives filled their elevated platforms, their various forms creating a tapestry of shapes and colors that reminded Warren of every species that considered humanity inferior. Ambassador Zekthar stood at the center of the chamber, 6 arms folded in a gesture that clearly conveyed his expectation of human surrender. Captain Jake Morrison took his seat in the human section, feeling the eyes of hundreds of alien delegates focused on their small group. The tension in the chamber was different this time. Where before there had been uncertainty and fear, now there was an anticipation that felt almost festive. The Council members were gathering to witness what they believed would be humanity's final submission to galactic authority. "Period has expired," Zekthar announced, his voice carrying the satisfaction of someone who had never doubted the outcome. "We are prepared to hear Earth's response to the Council's generous terms." Warren stood slowly, her movements deliberate and controlled. She had practiced this moment in her mind countless times over the past month, but nothing could have prepared her for the reality of addressing the most powerful political body in the galaxy. Every word she spoke would be analyzed by historians. For generations to come, the United Earth government has carefully considered the Council's proposal. She began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's translation systems. "After extensive consultation with our leadership and our people, we have reached a unanimous decision." The chamber fell silent, except for the quiet hum of energy fields and life support systems. Even the usually active alien delegates stopped, their constant chittering and movement to focus on Warren's words. Zekthar leaned forward slightly, preparing to accept humanity's surrender with appropriate dignity. "The United Earth government rejects your ultimatum in its entirety," Warren announced, her voice never wavering despite the magnitude of her words. "We will not surrender our fleet. We will not accept Council oversight of our colonies. And we will not submit to any authority other than our own democratic government." The silence that followed was deafening. For several long seconds, no one in the chamber seemed able to process what they had just heard. Zekthar's expression shifted from satisfaction to confusion to growing anger as the implications of Warren's words became clear. Furthermore, Warren continued before anyone could interrupt, effective immediately. "The United Earth's government is implementing a complete embargo on all quantum crystalline exports to Council member species." The chamber erupted in chaos. Most of the alien delegates had never heard of quantum crystals. but their scientific advisors began frantically accessing their databases and sending emergency communications. Within minutes, the true impact of Warren's announcement became clear to anyone with knowledge of advanced physics and engineering. Dr. Sam Parker watched from his position in the back of the human delegation as panic spread through the alien representatives. His months of careful intelligence gathering had revealed just how dependent Council technology had become on materials that only existed in human-controlled space. The crystals that humanity had discovered weren't just valuable. They were essential for the next generation of faster-than-light travel and energy production. "This is preposterous," Zekthar declared, his voice rising above the commotion in the chamber. "Humans cannot simply dictate terms to the entire galaxy. You have no leverage, no power to enforce such demands." Warren smiled for the first time. "Since entering the chamber, Captain Morrison, please provide our friend with the current tactical situation." Morrison stood and activated his portable display unit, projecting a three-dimensional map of local space into the center of the chamber. The map showed the positions of Council fleets that had been secretly gathering to enforce their ultimatum against humanity. "As you can see," Morrison began, his voice carrying the confidence of someone who held superior information, "your fleets have been under constant observation for the past 3 weeks. What you may not realize is that their sensor capabilities have been significantly reduced during that time." At that exact moment, across 50 light-years of space, Captain Paul Jenkins received the authorization code he had been waiting for. His strike force of 12 stealth ships had been positioned in the outer regions of 3 different star systems, each one home to a major Council military installation. The operation that followed was surgical in its precision. Jenkins and his fellow commanders didn't destroy anything that would cause casualties or justify retaliation. Instead, they targeted sensor arrays, communication relays, and navigational systems. Within 2 hours, every major Council military base within striking distance of human space found themselves operating blind and unable to coordinate with their allies. On Vortani Prime, engineer Mary Collins uploaded the virus she had been perfecting. For 6 months into the planet's orbital defense grid, the program was designed to look like a routine maintenance update, but it would gradually degrade the system's effectiveness over the following weeks. Similar sabotage occurred simultaneously on dozens of Council worlds carried out by human workers who had gained their employers' complete trust over years of faithful service. The beauty of the operation was its subtlety. Nothing was destroyed outright, no one was killed, and no acts of war were committed. Instead, the Council's military advantage simply began to evaporate as their own technology turned unreliable. Back in the Council chamber, emergency reports began flooding in from across Council space. Military commanders found themselves unable to communicate with their fleets. Planetary defense systems were reporting mysterious malfunctions. Trade networks that had operated flawlessly for centuries were suddenly experiencing cascading failures. "How is this possible?" demanded Counselor Vexai of the Centauri Alliance, his translator struggling to convey his species' equivalent of outrage. Warren's expression remained calm as she addressed the chamber. "For 3 years, the Council has systematically attempted to isolate humanity through economic pressure and bureaucratic harassment. You assumed that because we were newcomers to galactic civilization, we would be helpless against your superior numbers and technology." She paused, letting her words sink in before delivering the final blow. "What you failed to consider is that, during those same 3 years, human engineers and technicians have been maintaining your equipment. Human traders have been moving your goods, and human scientists have been studying your weaknesses. You taught us exactly where to strike for maximum effect." The chamber descended into chaos as the full scope of humanity's response became clear. The species that had gathered to witness human submission instead found themselves confronting a carefully orchestrated demonstration of why underestimating humanity was a fatal mistake. 3 months had passed since Admiral Warren delivered humanity's rejection to the Galactic Council. The galaxy was a very different place. Commander Julie Peterson stood on the bridge of the ESS Liberty, watching through the main view screen. As a Vortani diplomatic vessel approached, under a flag of truce, the same species that had demanded humanity's submission now came offering trade agreements and mutual defense treaties. "Incoming transmission from the Vortani ship," reported Lieutenant Commander Danny Brooks from the communications station. "They're requesting permission to come aboard and discuss what they call matters of mutual interest." Peterson smiled as she remembered her first encounter with Vortani ships 3 years earlier. Back then, they had refused to acknowledge human vessels as equals, treating Earth's diplomats like children who needed constant supervision. Now they approached hat in hand, desperate to restore relationships that their own arrogance had destroyed. "Grant them permission to dock," Peterson ordered, "but maintain full security protocols. Trust is something that has to be earned back." The change in galactic politics had been swift and dramatic. Within weeks of humanity's response to the Council's ultimatum, the attempted blockade of human space had collapsed completely. Council member species discovered that their own trade networks depended far more heavily on human-maintained technology than they had realized. Dr. Ryan Clark had become one of the most famous scientists in the galaxy almost overnight. His research on quantum crystal applications was published freely throughout known space, demonstrating humanity's willingness to advance galactic civilization. However, the crucial implementation details remained under strict human control, ensuring that Earth maintained its technological advantage. "The basic principles are simple enough," Clark explained during a lecture at the Galactic Science Institute on Rigel Prime. "The crystals exist in multiple quantum states simultaneously, allowing for unprecedented energy efficiency and faster-than-light travel. What makes them truly revolutionary is their ability to create stable wormholes for instantaneous communication across vast distances." In the audience, alien scientists from dozens of species listened with intense interest. Many had spent their entire careers studying faster-than-light physics, only to discover that their understanding was decades behind what humanity had achieved in just a few months. The knowledge that these crystals only existed in human-controlled space had shifted the balance of galactic power in ways that were still being understood. On Earth, it's a newly constructed Soul Defense Command Center, buzzed with activity as Admiral Morrison reviewed the daily intelligence reports. The facility represented humanity's new approach to galactic relations: cooperation through strength, never submission through weakness. "Status report on diplomatic contacts," Morrison requested from his aide, Captain Susan Walsh. 17 different species have requested formal trade negotiations this week," Walsh replied, consulting her datapad. "The Andorian Republic wants to establish a permanent embassy on Earth. The Tau Seti Confederation is offering military alliance terms that would have been unthinkable 6 months ago." Morrison nodded as he studied the reports. The transformation had been remarkable to witness. Species that had barely acknowledged humanity's existence now competed for Earth's attention and favor. The galaxy had learned a hard lesson about the dangers of underestimating human determination and ingenuity. Ambassador Warren, Earth's first Minister of Galactic Relations, established her office in what had once been considered neutral space. The new diplomatic facility orbited a star system that belonged to no single species, serving as a meeting place where Earth could conduct business with multiple alien governments simultaneously. "The Galactic Council still exists," she explained to a gathering of human colonial governors, "but its grip on galactic politics has been permanently loosened. No longer can a small group of established species dictate terms to newcomers or torty squeets claimed or newcomers or use their technology advantage to maintain control. The Council had been forced to accept a new reality. Humanity controlled resources that were essential for galactic advancement, operated the most advanced communication networks in known space, and had demonstrated the ability to disrupt alien technology at will. More importantly, dozens of other species had begun to question why they should submit to Council authority when humanity had proven that independence was possible. Dr. Nina Foster continued her weapons research, but now her work focused on defensive systems rather than offensive capabilities. The quantum torpedo technology that had given humanity such an advantage was being adapted for peaceful purposes, creating mining equipment that could operate more efficiently than anything previously imagined. "We've successfully converted the phasing technology for industrial use," she reported to Earth's Science Council. Mining operations using quantum phase extractors can harvest materials from asteroid cores without damaging the surrounding rock structure. The applications for colonial development are enormous. The irony was not lost on Foster that weapons designed to penetrate alien defenses had become tools for building human civilization. It seemed fitting that humanity's greatest military advantage would ultimately serve to create rather than destroy. Captain Morrison, now. Admiral Morrison stood in the observation deck of Sol Defense Command. Watching the steady stream of diplomatic vessels requesting audiences with Earth, the traffic had increased so dramatically that new orbital facilities were being constructed to handle the volume. "It's remarkable how quickly things can change," commented General Rick Thompson as he joined Morrison at the viewing window. 6 months ago, the Council was demanding our submission. Now they're begging us to share our technology. Morrison nodded, his expression thoughtful. The galaxy learned something important about humanity. We don't start fights, but we don't back down from them either. We'll push us hard enough, and we'll push back harder than anyone expects. The lesson had spread throughout known space. Species that had never heard of Earth suddenly knew the story of how a young civilization had faced down the most powerful political entity in the galaxy and won. The tale was told in 1,000 different ways across countless worlds, but the message was always the same. Never underestimate the humans. In the end, the Council's attempt to blackmail humanity had backfired spectacularly. Instead of forcing Earth into submission, they had awakened a sleeping giant that would reshape galactic civilization for generations to come. The age of human ascendancy had begun, not through conquest or domination, but through the oldest human tradition of all, refusing to kneel when others demanded submission. The galaxy would never be the same, and humanity intended to make sure it was better for everyone.